Mexico. So as the supervisor said, I was born in Tijuana. I'm also an English learner. Immigrated here when I was 3, and I was raised in North San Diego in a little town called Poway. Hablo español, para esos que hablan español. I also want to take this opportunity before I go too much into my presentation to introduce a colleague of mine, a Deputy Superintendent for Government Affairs. His name is Kai Jackson. He's right here. And he's going to have to run off to a hearing, but I wanted to introduce part of our team. So State Superintendent, you must be wondering, so what are his priorities? His #1 priority is really to close the achievement and opportunity gap. He really wants to get down to basics. Reading, writing. We need to make sure kids know how to do that and do that well. So literacy is incredibly important to him. Early learning is incredibly important to him. Professional development, high quality professional development is really important to him, and particularly in the STEM fields. And he and I are aficionados of STEM or STEAM education. So he's incredibly supportive of diversifying the teacher workforce and the education workforce. It's really important to him. In fact, he's held 2 achievement panels, and one it was global, and the last one he did just a couple of weeks ago was about diversifying the teacher workforce. In particular, African American male teachers are very few, and our boys and girls of different ethnicities need to see their teachers represent them, right? So he's incredibly interested in that. So one of the other sort of major buckets is we need to have data that connects early education, K-12 and higher ed, so that we support students. A student shouldn't have to apply 3 or 4 or 5 times throughout their life to tell folks that they're poor. Like I need resources, or my family needs additional tutoring, or when you go to the doctor and they pull you up on the screen and they know you've had a hip replacement, they know you've had physical therapy, they know what medication you're on. But when our kids go to school and it's a new school or they have to move, they don't know the first thing about what that student needed or got. So we really need to better serve students and more of a student-centered a system, because a lot of the policies we pass are really great for the adults, but maybe not so good for the students. So his lens is all about equity, and it's all about making sure we serve the students. So I'm excited about his priority over achievement gap. The other priority is really to be a system of support for schools. We're the Department of Education. We're located over here on 15th and N Street. There's about 1,500 employees here at the Department of Education. And 2/3 of our, people don't know, what do you all do? 2/3 of our funding is federal, 1/3 of our funding is general, and most of the time we're asked to monitor and do compliance. There's not a lot of money left over to do literacy campaigns and achievement gap, but we're going to do our darndest to make sure that happens. And of course we have the opportunity to advocate and sponsor bills, and so we have quite a few issue areas. In fact, the superintendent is so interested in including the public and into our policy making that he actually has 13 work groups. Everyone's invited. We have 1,000 people that are part of it. And of course, the first one is the achievement gap, teacher shortage, improving literacy is another one, improving special education is another one. We really need to work on that area. We want to increase K-12 funding, and we were so thrilled that the governor included $4.4 billion more above the Prop 98 sort of guarantee. So we were thrilled with the governor and all the investments he made in special education, pensions, and of course early education. Another work group that he has going is college affordability, early education, and we mentioned STEM and how important STEAM and CTE, the jobs for tomorrow, dual language, and what he means by that is not that he doesn't support English learners. He wants every student to speak more than one language. We're in California, we gotta get beyond that, right? Mm-hmm. Professional development for educators, I mentioned, improving data collection. We wanna really figure out addressing pension obligations. Really important is student health and safety. One of the things that the superintendent talks a lot about is, look, you can send your student to school, but if they're hungry, if they're experiencing trauma or poverty, generational poverty, if they have other social, emotional things, mental health things going on, we need to provide those supports. We have a literacy campaign going on. We're also really interested in teacher training, particularly around LGBTQ student support. And then finally, one of my favorites, because I just came from running the California Student Aid Commission, is college affordability. I don't care who you are in this state. You can be low income, you can be a little higher income, you're gonna still struggle with paying for college, right? So we're supporting a bill and co-sponsoring a bill, AB 1314, I hope I got that right, by Assemblymember McCarty and Medina, that would allow for, no matter where your student goes, if they go to community college, CSU, UC, or a private, their living expenses, which are more often higher than the tuition, would get covered, right? Because that's what really makes access happen. So he has a few priority bills, helping homeless students, taxing private prisons, give a little bit of money to the education system. He really believes that students today need to feel valued for who they are and what they bring. I mentioned to you I was born in Tijuana. I mentioned to you that I spoke Spanish. Me and my family lived in a little town called Poway, really good school district, but we were one of very few Latinos. And for about 15 to 20, until I got to college, I was embarrassed of being Mexican. I was embarrassed of speaking Spanish. I was embarrassed of listening to music in my town because of the way we were portrayed in the media, around us. It's really disheartening the way the community might treat us for being from a different culture. It's so different now, but I think ethnic studies would go a long way in helping support students. It wasn't until college that I became really proud of who I am and realized the sacrifices my parents made for me to be where I am. And so, and I didn't really embrace it because the history you learn is someone else's history. It's not necessarily our own. And so we and he really support ethnic studies bill by Assemblymember Medina, AB 331. I hope I got that right, Kai. We have a STEM teaching pathway bill, non-public school bill, as well as school safety. We're really supportive of this concept of the whole child and what does the whole child need. So you go to school, but wouldn't it be great if health services, psychological service, dental, mental services, along with any other social services were right there? So we have a community schools bill we're excited about. We mentioned the literacy campaign and professional development for teachers, because really, if students aren't reading by the 3rd grade, and many students are, if you look at our statistics, your school, your region, look at where students of color are, low-income students, you probably don't have 50% reading at proficiency by 3rd grade, which is a problem because you know the statistics in that pipeline to prison, right? If a student doesn't feel like they're smart, like they're capable, like they can keep up, they end up, it ends up really affecting their self-esteem and who they hang around with and what they end up doing and how they see themselves. And so that's really important to us. And I mentioned the college affordability bill and the teacher training bill around supporting students, LGBTQ students. So we're really excited. We know that another big issue in Santa Clara, how many of you think that your town or your region is the highest cost of living in the state? Highest cost, right? So it's so hard to get the best teachers when they can't afford to live there. So the superintendent has been very supportive of teacher housing. So he has a proposal, it's involved in the May revise, I hope it's in the May revise, and it would give schools access to $125 million so that they can take their surplus property and convert it into development for housing for their teachers and educators, which is huge. It's one of his biggest priorities because we know it's so expensive to live in the state of California. If you want the best teachers in your city, in your town, you've got to provide housing that they can afford. So we're excited about that. And I mentioned to you that we have these 13 work groups. I'm happy to provide information to you all about where they're happening. Everyone is invited, both internal CD folks and external folks. They're going to be online and in person, but if any of those subjects interest you or your constituents, we'll be happy to get you information about where they're happening. And some of them are just online. And you can just do the video chat kind of proposal, maybe even host it at your county office of education,
Yes.
or something like that. But we're really excited to include you as part of it. The third issue, I talked about being a system of support for county office of education. I talked about closing the achievement gap or the opportunity gap. The third thing we really want to do is we got to elevate our value to you all, our constituents, and we need to see you all as our constituents and our clients. And so if we can be of more service to you and to districts and others, because I think sometimes we have a reputation like we're tolerated. Oh, there's the Department of Education, they're here to do compliance and monitoring. But we can do much more, and we should. And so with that, I'm gonna leave you with that, but also allow you to ask any questions that you have. Thank you.
We have time for a couple questions. Who hasn't asked